Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Dale.
We're sisters and best friends, and this is Proof It's Possible.
Jamie and I are complete opposites, but somehow through every stage of life, we stay on the same team. We're kicking the door wide open and sharing our morning coffee chats with you.
Join us as we chat about everything from chasing our dreams to entrepreneurship to family, friendship, and what other craziness we have going on that week.
Hello, welcome back. Last month, Jamie and I had the pleasure of being guests on our good friend Kristina Bartold's podcast, Build Your Digital Community. And today we're excited to be able to share that episode with all of you. So join us as we chat with Kristina about overcoming obstacles, attracting positive energy, personal and business growth, and more. So let's dive in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
This one is going to be a banger. I think both for the listeners and for us, I'm so excited to have my friends Jamie and Dale here. And Jamie and Dale are most recently best-selling authors, so I'm so excited to have them both here. But Jamie and I met at one of Chris Harder's roundtables. We became instant best friends. She was like, you also need to become best friends with my sister. I took a 2-for-1 deal, and here we are. I love it. And I recently just visited them in Kelowna and in Calgary for their book launches, and I'm just so excited and grateful for their friendship. But yeah, I'm just so happy to be with you ladies. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
So you know what's so funny? I'm sure you find this from hosting your podcast together. It's so hard with 3 people.
So hard.
You're always like, who's going to say something? Who's it going to be?
Or we're talking over each other.
Yeah. Well, luckily we've got a great editing team, right? Editing team where we're going to be able to
Shout out to Josh.
Yeah, Josh and the team splitting everything up. I love it. Also, Josh loves when he's shouted out in these things. He's always like, they were talking about me. So he's probably in the room next door laughing about it. But I would love for you guys to tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of maybe how you got into being an entrepreneur, because I know you're both entrepreneurs in such different ways and realms, and your sisters, and there's so much there. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about how you got into entrepreneurship and kind of where you're at now. And maybe we'll start with Jamie, and then we'll move to Dale. See? Order of operation.
Oh my goodness, how I got into it, I don't even really know. It was almost accidental in that my husband and I, we just started his first business, which was just kind of a consulting business. And then I transitioned into a consulting business for my role. I'm a safety professional by trade, so I'm a Canadian registered safety professional. And I started off just doing safety audits and things like that. And then that just grew into the 6 businesses that we own today. So it's been a bit of a journey, but we are just multifaceted entrepreneurs and in very industrial and male dominant businesses. I am the president of 2 of our companies, and it's been a learning curve, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
And Jamie, just before we get to that, I'd love for you to tell people about kind of your newest venture and this amazing mission you have on your heart, which is why I was so attracted to you at this round table, because you're so serious in demeanor. If anyone ever sees Jamie, go watch their Proof It's Possible podcast on YouTube. We're very lucky to produce their podcast, and I'm always like, Jamie looks like she at any minute could defend someone in a courtroom. She is so serious, but has this so much joy, and she's so funny.
That's hilarious that you're saying that, because Dale was just accusing me of having my eyes closed and being asleep in half of our podcast. So, I mean, I got a lot of different looks, but
you can be serious and sleepy.
Serious and sleepy. And that's my reality. I am serious, I am fun, but I'm a mom of 3, so I'm always tired. So, yeah. But my latest business is family recovery coaching. So my husband is an alcoholic. I wrote a book about what it's like to love an addict. And it's just the perspective of kind of the chaos that happens in your own mind when you do love an addict. And I have had this on my heart for a very long time, that I would help people. Once I got out of the shitstorm that I was in, once I got out of the depression and the victimhood and the sadness that I was feeling, that I would throw down a ladder and I would help anybody else that was feeling all these things feel a little bit less alone, and I would guide them to a better, more happy life. And so that is what I do currently. That is one of my businesses that I love and I'm very passionate about. It is also my newest baby and the most vulnerable of all my businesses, because it is close to my heart. It's not something that I feel really distant from. This is real life, and this is my reality. So I love it, and I have so much love and compassion for the people that are battling these inner demons themselves.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's amazing how we could look at all these business people and we could look at all these people who are like kicking ass. You're like, we own 6 companies, like we're doing the damn thing, and not really understand like what's going on behind the surface. That can be so difficult. And it's like, I think sometimes those are the people that feel the most shame about, things being not in order in their life. And so I know, Jamie, you provide like a really high level of support and you have big dreams for the future of the support you provide. So I'm really excited to see kind of how that comes to fruition. And Dale, I'd love for you to tell a bit about your journey and kind of how you got to where you are today.
All right. Well, I am an interior designer. I'm also a website designer. And how I got into interior design, I've been an interior designer for 20 years. And what basically ended up happening was at the age of 16, I had a surgery that did not go well. And when I had that surgery, I ended up not walking out of the surgery ever again. I was not able to walk at that point. So I was now a full-time wheelchair user. I had to return to a home that did not function for me, and I had to figure out the rest of my life. So I went to college for something else just because I needed to like put one foot in front of the other and keep moving, and got out of college, realized I absolutely hated it. But I had always wanted to be an interior designer, but my guidance counselor basically said, it's not possible for you. Like that is not, you're not going to be able to get into people's homes. You won't even be able to finish the schooling because you have to be able to build a piece of furniture and you're not physically capable. So it was one of those things that I was like, okay, I'll derail my dreams. I'll move on. I'll go to something else. And that something else was not fulfilling. I did not like it. It was not for me. And so as soon as I realized that, it was like my call to action to basically do the thing that, because in the meantime, I'd figured out how to just like help people that I knew on a fun level redesign their spaces, because I was already kind of good at it. It was my natural talent. And so I ended up basically having a conversation with my aunt, who is business coach, and she's like, you're already doing it. You already figured out all the barriers to get over. You're just not charging. You're just doing it for friends and family, but you've figured out how to do it. So get at it. So I went back to school. I got my degree. And I became an interior designer, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go end up being like working at one of those show homes and just sitting, waiting for people to come in. And then I would talk to them about all their finishing choices and be like, do you want package 1? Do you want package 2? And because after being in a wheelchair, I was really nervous that I wouldn't be able to make a living for myself and provide for myself. It was one of my like scariest parts of my life, because if you can't provide for yourself, it's hard to know what your future is going to look like in every other area. So once I like got out, I thought I just need a job, but I ended up getting one client, like a friend of a friend kind of thing. And I thought, okay, after this client, I'm going to go get a job. I need a job. And then I got another client and another client. And so I never did get a job. It's been 20 years and I've only worked for myself. And then I ended up as a website designer, because to me, website design and interior design are actually very, very similar. And when I couldn't get my own website the way I wanted it, I'm like, I got to figure this out. I'm too particular to hire somebody else. I only care about design, so I need to make it the design I want. And so I learned how to use one of the platforms, and then long story short, I ended up being approached by that platform, and they've asked me to be a partner. And so now I design websites for all kinds of people. And yeah, use my design principles in both businesses.
Wow. Okay. Also an amazing story. Like, I maybe should have split you guys up. Now I'm thinking about this, because I have so many things I'm thinking about. But isn't it amazing? I think what is coming to mind for me, for both of you actually, is like, you're using life circumstances that for both of you are pretty out of your control, and using it to fuel good and like be able to like make impact in other people's lives, in businesses, in like even when you're working on the interior of someone's home, right? Like, I think of all of that, like that is impact, right? Like you are making an impact in the way that they live, in what they see, like everything. Like, and so for both of you, like, I'm just so amazed by how you've been able to take these things that could keep someone down, right? And it could keep someone from living like in their full potential or their full power, and really making that something that, you're using as fuel.
For sure. And like, I have a theory that we can only understand our own problems. So basically, like, we live within our own umbrella of challenges, whatever that looks like. And everybody's challenges are extremely different depending on what you're going through. But the bigger the challenge, in my opinion, and this is just because I'm like somebody that has decided that my challenges aren't going to stop me. They're not going to change my direction. They're not going to, and I've had to power through some of those things, and so has Jamie. I feel like, you know, if I had smaller problems, I would probably have smaller success as well. And that's because my personality is to push through whatever the problem is. So once you feel like, and it's why we named our podcast Proof It's Possible, is once you feel like you've proved to yourself that something is possible, you can do anything. And so if you prove to yourself that something big is possible, then your next thing is bigger. And then your next thing is bigger. So if your problems stay small, you don't really have to battle anything. And then you don't get that self-trust that actually helps build up your confidence in every area of your life. If that makes
It's almost like, for me, it's almost like, you know, the saying, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward in business. But I feel like in personal circumstances, like the bigger the tragedy, the bigger the heartbreak, the bigger the obstacle, the more potential it is to serve as rocket fuel to live out your dreams and to build the business and to do the thing that you thought was so impossible, because you literally are like a slingshot. The more you get pulled back, just the further you're gonna go. That's what it feels like for me anyways, is that the deeper into despair I felt like I was going, the more I knew that once I was out of it, I couldn't stay quiet anymore.
So what would you say to somebody who's kind of in the dark on that right now, you know, where they've experienced something in their life or in their business? And, you know, I recently actually with somebody I'm coaching, they were talking a little bit about starting fresh. Like they were like, I kind of have to hit the reset button on my business. And I don't know like what that means. And maybe I should go get a job, and maybe I should, you know, like they were really struggling with it. And for me, I'm like, I was like, oh my God, but this is your rise. Like, this is the chapter in your book where, you know, you go back and you get a job because, you know, you got to make ends meet, but you're pushing through. And then all of the sudden you're an overnight success. Like, this is your rise. And people don't want to hear that. Like when they're in the low, like they're like, this is not my rise.
The other thing I think is that like, that is so, so important is that we can move forward, or we can teach from scars, not from wounds. So when it's still fresh, you're not in a position to teach anybody how to do anything. You're not in a position to even teach yourself how to come out of it. But once you're out of it, once the wound has healed and you can do some deep reflection, that's when the creative and juices will flow and all of the ideas will come to you, and it'll all kind of seem to make sense. When you're in the thick of it, when you're in the messy, mucky, dirty, bottom of the basement kind of stuff, it does just feel really hard. It feels incredibly hard. And it's almost, when you see or hear something positive, you're like, oh, like your thermostat is not ready to hear it yet, because you're just in so much nastiness. So I think it's, my biggest piece of advice is that it's inch by inch. So like, be gentle on yourself when you're in that deep dark point, or you know your business is failing or whatever. Don't look at the end goal. Don't be like, I want to make $10 million this year. How can I make enough money to just get by this month? What do I need to do today to make sure I have enough money to pay my bills tomorrow? Like, it's inch by inch. And then when you have eventually climbed the mountain, you can look back and say, look how far I've come.
For sure. And I also think it's like a series of mindset shifts. Every single day, all day long. Like I always use the example of, it is actually harder for me to get out of bed in the morning than the average person. Like it takes me longer. I don't just swing my legs over the edge of the bed and stand up. I slowly get up and I slowly transfer into my wheelchair, and it takes way longer, and little things are harder for me. So I could be just stop there. I could stop there and say, this is too hard. This is all I have capacity for. I'm just gonna get by, because that's what I have the energy for, is these little moments that feel too hard. Or I can change my mindset and say, thankfully, I'm in a position where I can still get out of bed by myself, because there's people who wish that they could, and they need help to get out of bed. That's their reality. So I'm getting out of bed every day. I'm running 2 businesses every day. You know, so you start compounding your wins, and you start being proud of yourself for compounding those wins, because every little thing can can actually be giving gratitude. You know, your morning coffee can be giving gratitude. Your one act per day that's getting you closer to the thing, whether it's like an act that's actually going to take you to it or it's just going to maybe take you to it, you did it. And that's what matters, because we can sit in the negativity or we can do one thing every day that changes our life or our perspective or our mindset, our positivity.
Okay, I love that, because I was gonna say, I think the power of that one thing, of like that, like one thing you can be excited about, that one thing you can be grateful for, that one win can make such a difference. And I think often when we're in the business world, like we see people be successful and it just like, it feels overnight. Like it feels like we've been grinding over here and, you know, these people are moseying up and here we are like, you know, like burning the midnight oil, and really recognizing like every win, especially when you're in like a feeling of like stress or like anguish or whatever it is, that can be such a big difference, whether that's in your business or in your life, of like looking for that like one thing that you can be excited about and proud of.
Exactly. Well, and the thing is comparing ourselves to others is never a good plan, because there's always going to be somebody. You could be, you know, a billionaire, you could have $1 billion, and then there will be somebody that has 5 billion. And then there'll be somebody that has 20 billion. You know, like you'll never win if you're always comparing. And we all are given a very different set of circumstances. So it's not, comparing just doesn't make any sense. And it's funny because I won something called Top 40 Under 40 in the city that I live in. And people were kind of like, a few people came up to me and were like, you know, it's so nice to see that your career is going so well. Like, and kind of gave me your overnight success talk. And I'm like, it's been like, at that point it had been like 17 years of me running my own business. I was like, it's the longest overnight in history. Like, took a long time to be this overnight success. You just didn't see the original stuff. You didn't see and to this day, being an entrepreneur has a different set of rules than having a job. I do work on weekends sometimes, but then I also get to say, okay, it's Friday. I'm going to take the afternoon off and go for lunch with my friend, or I'm going to go to Kelowna and see my family, you know, and I don't have to ask anybody's permission, but it doesn't mean that my work goes away. It just means that I have to prioritize it differently. And, you know, so it's just an interesting, entrepreneurship is its own beast to manage. And it's something that we all have to learn what works for us, what doesn't work for us. We cannot compare to others. We cannot compare people's journeys, because you'll always feel like you're on the losing end of it.
The other thing is that comparing to somebody's 20th chapter when you're on your first chapter, you only compare their wins. I notice. You never think to yourself, oh, they've put in, 8 more years than I have. They've put in a lot more hours. They've invested a lot more money. They've done a lot more things. They've had to hire and fire. They've had to learn all of these lessons. You just see how success came so easy to them. Yeah. You never look at like what they had to sacrifice to get there.
I actually had a situation like this happen recently where someone was talking to me about our business, and they had made this comment about how like we had like done such a good job growing network. And I was like, yeah, like, we've done it. And they're like, oh yeah, you're so lucky that people like you. Like, you're so, and I was like, yeah, totally. I've also paid for a lot of fronts, like in terms of like, I have probably invested, like truthfully in the last 3 years, like probably close to $100,000 in being in rooms, going to masterminds, going to events, connecting with people. So I'm always like, I paid for all my friends, not ongoing. I'm not sending, Jamie and Dalian checks over here, but like, Jamie's going to out me.
We are still expecting it, but that's fine.
So my Venmo is
we take
listed below.
Give you those WestJet points. But it's funny, like I always like have to remind people that I'm like, yeah, but I invested to be in all these rooms. So like the rocket ship that you feel like I'm on, that you're watching, like you could be on it too if you want to put in that kind of money, right? Like I could be sitting with 70 grand in my pocket right now, but I don't think my business would be anywhere close to where it is today. And so it's all about those like pushes and pulls, but you have no idea what people are doing to get to where they want to be.
And I think that other thing that we really need to acknowledge is that like sometimes you look at some of the most successful people and are like, oh, it must be so nice for them. It's so easy for them. Oh, they became an overnight success, or whatever the story you've conjured in your mind is. But if you dig deep, there's so many things that got them there. Like, for instance, people are always really surprised when I'm like, oh, my husband's an alcoholic, because they're like, oh, I thought your life was perfect. They've already decided that, like, because I'm a business owner and, you know, outwardly successful, that I must have it all together because that my whole life has to be perfect. When really, when you look at some of the biggest entrepreneurs or successes, they have these really intense journeys. Like, it was never super easy, but we just kind of seem to forget about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, if you look at like any celebrity, like, you know, like all of these people have these things going on, and we're all like so like, oh, look at them, they're so lucky, and it's like it's not luck, right? Sorry, Dale, you were gonna say something.
No, I was just gonna go back to that. It's not luck, and I do say all the time, I'm so lucky, but it doesn't, for me, it's not about being an entrepreneur. That's not where I'm lucky. That is from like being a big thinker, that is manifesting, that is putting myself in the right community, in the right rooms, you know. And like 2 years ago, I thought to myself, I don't feel like I know the right people at this point in my life to grow. I've been doing this business for 20 years. And so I needed some friends like you. And luckily, Jamie ended up meeting you, you know, like some people who you can have entrepreneur conversations with, because your friends, although they might be brilliant, if they're not in the entrepreneur space, they don't have the same experience. You know, they're talking more about getting their raise or getting their promotion or getting their bonuses at year end. And I'm like, yeah, there's no bonus unless I make a bonus. So, you know, you kind of got to find the people that you're like, what did you do in this situation? How, you know, I need to sponge some information here because I'm 20 years into my business and I don't necessarily need to learn everything the hard way. I can surround myself with people who have learned 5 things the hard way, and I've learned 5 things the hard way, and the next person's learned 5 things the hard way. And you can have lunch with them or have a meeting with them and say, guide me on this because I have no idea. You know, and I ask Jamie stuff all the time because she's very like business and money minded, and I'm way more like creative, and I hate my month ends. I hate all the business of business. Yeah. But I love being an entrepreneur, and I love making my own schedule, and I love having freedom, and I loved, you know, dictating how much money I make, and knowing that if I went to a job, I wanted to go into some of these rooms and I needed $10,000 to be in the rooms that I want to be in that year, I would be in a situation where if you only have a job, you make what you make. But if you're an entrepreneur, you can say, how else can I make money this year to get me into the rooms I want to be in? What is my like game plan? You're always thinking, growing, strategizing, pushing your own limits, coming up with your own ideas, and being creative about what your opportunities are.
I also think there's such a mindset that needs, like a shift that needs to happen if you are an entrepreneur or you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Because if you have ever said to yourself, and especially recently, oh, it's easier for them, it must be nice for them, anything like that, you have to look at things differently and say, like, I am inspired by them. What have they done? Not, you don't see them as competition, like, oh, must be nice, in that negative connotation. You look at them for inspiration and think to yourself, what can I learn from them that I don't already know, but they do?
So Keisha always says that. Keisha, Get Married with the Empower Her podcast, she always says, like, looking to other people who are like pouring belief into you that what you think is possible, right? Like, and I see that in a big way too, because I've always been that person that's like, oh, I see that they can do it, that means I can do it too. Like, there's no difference between what they have and I have, or what if there is, I can get that too. Like, I've always been like that. But it's interesting how many people, they have these like huge limiting beliefs, but I think it's because they're like exactly what you're saying, Dale, like they're in the wrong circles. Like they don't have, there's like this, I always call them memes. They're not memes. It's like a quote on Instagram. I'm like, you know, a meme, 95 years old, but it's like this quote of like, having a great group of female entrepreneur friends is like the biggest life upgrade. And I would totally agree with that, because even like, you know, as we started investing, it's not even about the clients that I get from it. It's me being able to be like, hey, like, Dale, I'm thinking about writing a book, and I want you to think about this topic, and you're like, great, like, let me give you feedback. Or if I'm like, Jamie, like, I'm struggling with this with my numbers, like, you know, I know you're just a call away, and it doesn't have to, you know, like, it can create so much support for you to talk about big ideas and exciting ideas.
The perfect example is when I met you and you were like, you need to write a book and you need to start a podcast. And I was like, no, I don't think that's for me, and blah, blah, blah. You know, all the limiting beliefs I had. And you were just like relentless, and you were like, no, people need to hear your messaging. People need to hear your story. The things you have to say are valuable. And you just wouldn't let me give up, even though I wanted to give up a bazillion times over. Like, to the point where I was like, God, what do I got to do to shake this girl? And then
the answer is cash.
And then here we are, you know, like with a top-rated podcast and a best-selling book, and it's like I needed that push. I needed those friends. I needed those people, those cheerleaders,
sure.
those girls in my circle that were believing in my potential when I couldn't see it yet.
Well, and with the podcast thing, it wasn't even like, I don't think I want to do that. It's like, hell no, not happening. We're not doing a podcast. She needs to stop with that. Like, I don't know why she's saying it. And now you should hear me. I'm
like, wow, this is going to be weird when I have to unfriend her.
Exactly. I really like her on a personal level, but this podcast thing's got to go. No, and so but now I'm like, I'm you selling you, because I'm like, you know what you need? A podcast. Do you want to hear, your message and your voice can be heard? Your podcast that you haven't started. You know, and I'm like sass talking people about things that I genuinely didn't think were all that important. I was like, well, just go on Instagram and do reels and stuff, and you can get your message through there, and you can. But for us, the podcast has made a huge difference, and it's let people into a part of our world that, you know, and our thoughts and our conversations that Jamie and I have, that people are always like, oh, I wish I had a sister. I wish I had a friend that I could talk to about all this stuff. You know, we get to now share those conversations with other entrepreneurs that maybe don't have their own circle yet, and they want to get some of this mindset shift. They want to have these conversations, and maybe at this point they're just going to get to listen to your podcast or listen to our podcast. And that's honestly how I started, because I was like, I need better thoughts going through my mind, because I'm not necessarily in the room with people yet, but I need to be having that good content flowing through me. It's, you know what they say, like, how healthy you are is not just like the food you eat and how much exercise you do. It's like, what are you watching on TV? What are you listening to on podcasts? If you're only watching like murder podcasts, you know, your brain might not be in the right place. Like you might not be in your growth season. You might be in your like entertainment or like curiosity season kind of thing.
Curiosity.
So,
your murder
curiosity and like darker.
Your dark season. But I will say that it's so true about if you're listening to this and you haven't found your group of girls yet, the people that are going to cheer for you the loudest and pick you up when you're feeling down, start by changing your mindset, listening to positive people that inspire you, learning, so that you have the right energy and vibes to attract the people that are going to take you further. The people that are going to be in your circle pretty soon, they're just not there yet.
For sure. And like, we had a girlfriend, I think it was last week, she made like the top list, and I saw her on the list, and I just about cried. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. You know, like I'm as happy for her as I would be for myself. Like, you know, because I know how awesome it was when you wrote us, Kristina, and we're like, hey, by the way, you made a list. And I was like, we don't know how to look up lists, so you're going to have to walk us through this. What is the list, and how did we get on it?
I think I summoned you from a pool.
You did. You're like, answer your phone. We have good things happening.
Well, firstly, I just need to acknowledge I very rarely am right about anything. I'm just flapping over here.
Yeah, right.
And I knew when I met Jamie that the podcast would be an awesome idea. I knew it. And then when she was like, I think I'm going to do it with my sister, I was like, oh, that's a no-brainer. Like, that is a no-brainer. So Jamie, thank you for not following me on Instagram and blocking me for good.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sticking with our like negative Nancy but statements where we were like, no thanks, we're good. Nope. Please stop.
You know what? But this is the stretchy zone, right? It's like when somebody tells you something and you're like, I can't believe that for myself, but I see you believe it, and that's awesome. But I was gonna say something about the whole like attracting what you want kind of thing, because it's kind of like dating. And I know we're all like married old women, mainly Jamie, but but you know, it's funny. My friend, she will kill me for using this example, and I'm 100% sure she's going to hear this. But when she would be dating, she would be like, "Oh, he drives a Honda Civic. Did you see that Honda Civic out there?" And I'd be like, "You drive a Honda Civic. Like, how dare you like judge this man for having a Honda Civic?" Nothing wrong with Honda Civics, everyone. Very reliable vehicle. But what was funny about the situation is it was like, what kind of man do you want? She's like, well, I want a guy who like, you know, has a really expensive car and like, you know, and I'm like, great. You go buy an expensive car. Like, be a match for someone who wants an expensive car.
Exactly.
And so it's the same, like, and Lori kind of talked about this. We were all at Girlfriends in Business in Phoenix in June. Like, she had said something about, I think she said this at Girlfriends in Business. I listen to this woman all the time. But she had said, whenever I want, like, fun voice notes from, like, my girlfriends, I start the conversation. So if I want to have like conversations, it's like me. I would like to go on a girls trip. I'm going to relentlessly text you about this girls trip. Because if you're not
going to make it happen before we turn 65.
Yes, because if you're not going to plan it, I'm going to plan it. And so, but it's like being a match to that. And I think it's the same for like exactly what you're saying, what you're listening to. Like Chris Harder always talks about positive propaganda, like getting those things that you need from the spaces you need them. And so it doesn't have to be a $10,000 room. It doesn't have to be a $5,000 mastermind. It doesn't have to be a trip to Phoenix, even though it can be. But it can be listening to a podcast and going on, and a lot of podcasts have Facebook groups that come with them, and, you know, engaging with the podcaster, messaging them, telling them you're listening. Like, if you're listening to a podcast, tell the podcaster you're listening, because it feels like we speak into a void. But like, it is just so important to try to create that community for yourself so that you're a match for whatever you're looking for.
Totally.
I agree with that.
Oh, I love it. Okay, well, Jamie and Dale, of course this flew by, and I have, like, no doubt, but I'll have to have you back. And why I would love for you to do is I'd love for maybe each of you to just tell about what you've got going on, and how people can get a hold of you. And, of course, we're going to link your books, because you got to buy these books. I have these books. I love it. So maybe we'll start with Dale this time.
What I have going on is all kinds of fun stuff. Some I cannot talk about right now, but I will hopefully get to talk about soon. And designing my little heart out. So if you need that, I do all kinds of remote work, as I work with people all over North America for both design and website design. And I have a book and a podcast, and we would love for you to join our mailing list at proofitspossible.com, listen, and just be part of our community.
Amazing. Jamie?
And my ditto. I'm not a designer and I'm not a website designer, but I would love if you would listen to our podcast, Proof It's Possible. Dale and I have some really exciting speaking opportunities coming up. So if you're interested in having us speak at your event, we would love to be there. We are speaking at Kristina's event in January, and we're so excited. Yay. And my book is out. If you are struggling to love an addict, I am always here, just a phone call away, whether that's, you know, one-to-one with me or group, or putting you in touch with the services that you're seeking. I can help with that as well. So I am just so grateful to be surrounded by amazing women like you, Kristina, like you, Dale, and like all of our friends. And I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I love you girls. And also, I'm just so grateful you stepped into the highest version of yourself. It only took me essentially handcuffing you to it, but I am just so grateful. And I know this is just the beginning. Like, this is just the first book. I don't know if you have more book dreams, but this is just the beginning of the podcast. This is just the beginning of all the things. And so, yes, Jamie and Dale will be speaking at my event, which by the time this is out, the tickets will be on sale January 13th for our High Vibe Women event in Kitchener, which I'm so excited about. And you can buy tickets. I'll leave links in the show notes. If there are tickets, I don't know. I think the tickets are going to fly, so there might not be tickets. But I am just so excited to have Jamie and Dale there, because they have the most amazing stories and wisdom, and I just know that they're just going to pour in so big to my community. So I'm so excited. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and go check out Proof It's Possible and go buy some books.
We are so grateful you're here.
It would mean the world to us if you'll subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel and leave us a review.
If you want to hear more from us, go to proofitspossible.com to join our mailing list and find our social links so you don't miss a thing.
Thanks, and chat next time.